chapter 24, section 2. So, in this medieval time period, your nobles were better off than the common person. If you were to look between the early 1800s to about the thousands, these nobles lived in wooden houses. These nice wooden houses surrounded by palisades. Palisades were these high wooden fences. And if there was an attack coming, villagers could come and seek protection inside the palisades. The houses were usually one room. They would have straw on the floor. Everything occurred here. I mean, you ate in this room. You slept in this room. You entertained guests in this room. People ate with their hands. Scraps of food on the floor for the dogs. And every couple of months you would take the straw out and burn it and put in fresh straw. The cooking fire was used to heat the home, and so the inside of these homes they were smoky. They were darkened ceilings and walls from the smoke and the soot from the fire. By the time you get to the 1100s, nobles are living in castles. These castles would have thick walls for protection. And they would have these corner towers, these tall corner towers, where archers could be up inside these corner towers to protect the castle. Some have moats. That way you couldn't get right next to the wall with a ladder, or it made it really hard to climb the walls. There weren't necessarily a lot of brush or trees right nearby to hide in. Some of them with moats would have drawbridges so you could cross the moat, and they could also pull that up then if they don't want people coming across. And the drawbridge usually led to a portcullis. The portcullis was this iron gate at the entrance to the castle. In case the drawbridge was down, they could drop this thing. So again, you can't gain entrance to the castle. In the middle of the castle, there was a large area that was open in the middle, and then you would find a keep. The keep was this tall tower with thick walls right there in the middle. Inside the keep would be the great hall, and there'd be variety of rooms, a dungeon. The household of the castle would live in the keep. You had rooms in the walls of the castle. This is where you would find shops, the kitchen, the stables, rooms for troops. Guests could stay there. Servants and officials usually lived in the castle. They were responsible for the castle since the nobles were gone a lot fighting. The castles could store a lot. People could last 6 months in a castle if they were attacked, due to what they stored in the castle. Now, if you're going to attack a castle, it took a job. Some would fill in the moat with dirt or with logs, and then they'd try to go over or under or through the walls. Some don't have moats. If let's say you tried to go over, a lot of times you try to go over the wall, you're going to face boiling water being poured on you from the top, or hot oil, or molten lead, or they would throw down huge stones to break the ladder or stop you from climbing. You would see some, as you see in the bottom right there, they would use these movable towers to get up to the wall. Some people would try to go through the walls using battering rams, or they would use like a catapult and launch these huge rocks or stones against the wall, trying to break the castle wall. Some would go under. and they would use wood to support these tunnels, and when they were far enough under the walls of the castle, they would actually burn the wood in the tunnels. And then when the tunnels collapsed, the walls of the castle could collapse. When nobles were home, they spent their time hunting and fishing. On cold winter evenings, they would play chess, or minstrels would stop by the castle to entertain the noble and their family. They would sing and play instruments. Noble women were called ladies, and husbands had complete control of their wives, of the noblewoman. Marriage was used to unite important families. Women had little say in who they married. The groom was given a dowry by the bride's family. And the groom would look for a bride with a large dowry, this gift. Women would usually marry between the ages of 12 to 14 years old, and the man would usually be around 30. As a woman, if you weren't married by the time you were 21, you probably weren't going to marry. And many would then become nuns. Wives did help run the estate. When the noble was away, the wife would defend the castle. The main duties of the wife was to have and raise children and to take care of the household. Other duties you could have would be train young girls to take care of the household, not just your children. Supervise the making of cloth and fine embroidery. Care for the sick and the poor on your husband's fief. Basically, keep the place running.